Hello, everyone, and welcome yet again to the Vitality Show. I have to tell you that my relationship with my husband has been such a dynamic and sometimes explosive and sometimes sweet and sometimes incredibly intimate and fun and playful experience. And over time, I've learned lessons about how we can make our relationship better, but it seems like it's a journey of infinite improvement, and there's constantly room for how we can make it better, especially since he's constantly changing as a human being and I'm constantly changing as a human being. So there's so much dynamism and flux. And well, of course, the world keeps changing and our family life keeps changing. And so I'm always excited to hear insights and feedback on how we can make our relationship better, which is why I'm excited to welcome our guest today, Chana Deutsch. Yes, she's a Chana and I'm a Chana. So you can work on your phlegm, exercises for today. And she's a relationship coach, and we're going to be exploring the idea of empathy and how it's really a key for building connection. She lives here in Jerusalem, about half an hour walk from my house in the Old City, which is a really magical place. And I look forward to welcoming her here with us right here. Welcome, Chana. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you. Such a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
So I was wondering if you could tell us, how did you become a relationship coach? Because my gut tells me that this was not your plan when you were playing dolls and Barbie and stuff when you were 5.
No, although I will tell you the funny thing that when I was a kid, I always said I was either going to be a teacher or a psychologist. So I kind of do both now. So
You wanted to be a
not so far
psychologist
out.
when you were little even?
Yeah, I always wanted to be a psychologist. I thought I would sit with my friends, I'd say, let's play house or let's play psychologist. And I'd sit there and say, what's going on for you and how can I help you? Or I would teach them. I'd set up a board and I would teach them, math equations that I made up. And I always wanted to be a teacher or a psychologist. So, and when I took this test when I was in 12th grade on how to choose your job, right? And they ask you a million questions. I don't know if you ever did that. So it came up for me that I should either be they give you 3 things. It was psychologist, teacher, or rabbi. So
You're doing it all. There we go.
test
Amazing.
works. What can I say? Yeah. So, but thank you. Yeah, it definitely has been a journey. I did not set out to be a relationship coach. Actually taught for many years and then I made the shift. And the way that happened is very much my story in my marriage as well, as you were sharing so beautifully. When I first got married, I was like, I'm going to be the best wife and we're going to have the best marriage. And I was so sure that I was going to do everything right. And so I spent a lot of time reading and talking to people and just I'm going to do this perfectly. And lo and behold, we were both so frustrated. We were both always feeling like this person just doesn't get me and something's not working. And just that frustration and resentment that builds up in relationships that I now see as poison. And it really led me to just keep looking and keep searching, which led me to tools and tips and skill building that really helped me. And then I started teaching it to others. I just found that, it worked so well for me. It helped me so much. I stopped feeling so stuck. I stopped feeling so alone. I stopped feeling so frustrated that I said, I have to share this. And so slowly I started sharing it with women in my community, sharing it with students. And eventually it just made sense to do it as my I was ready to start something different, something new. And I saw how helpful it was when I worked with women in this way. And so I shifted into being a relationship coach, and that is its own journey in itself.
So I was wondering if you could share with us, if you're willing to be vulnerable enough to share something about your relationship, your own personal relationship with your husband, and one tool that you got that really helped you guys that you could share with us that we could use in our own lives. Me especially, please.
Yeah, definitely. So, and this definitely relates to the topic that you want to talk about, empathy, but in a weird way, and you'll see. One of the things, especially, and now I know when I hear a woman say, I really want to be the best wife, I really want to have the perfect marriage, part of me goes, uh-oh. Because what happens when we are telling ourselves, I'm going to be the perfect anything, then what happens is that we choose to put perfection over connection, right? Everything becomes about I'll be the perfect wife. I want at the end of every day to be happy. I don't want to ever start a fight. I don't want to ever do anything that's going to cause an issue. So what do? We take our feelings and we take our desires and we take our boundaries and we take all this stuff that actually allows us to connect to someone else, right? In our feminine, authentic, vulnerable way. And we constrict it and we hold it in and we hold it in and we push it down. And what we're left with then is that, there's the resentment and the frustration inside of us because all that stuff's not coming out. And there's nothing to connect with, right? There's no connection. Our self is gone, right? I'm no longer me because I'm trying to just be the perfect person that you want me to be. I'm pretending I have no feelings, I have no desires because I don't want any issues. I don't want to cause any problems. And so what ends up happening is the opposite of what we hoped for, right? In the hope of I'll be the woman you want me to be so you'll love me, the woman that he fell in love with is gone.
Hmm.
Right. And instead of I'll keep this all inside because it's not worth a fight. I just wanted to make sure that we're happy and connected all the time. That means that I'm not being vulnerable. I'm not being authentic. I'm not going to say something if I'm scared it's going to upset you. I'm not going to say something if I'm scared you won't like it. And then there's no, vulnerability, authenticity, all that stuff that actually creates connection. And what
Yeah,
I've
and I
learned,
resent
yeah,
you for feeling so bad inside that I don't get to like be myself and it's your fault somehow, even though it's totally not.
yeah. And the crazy thing is that with all of that stuff, and this is part like a whole step discussion on its own, we're teaching the person to be upset, be in a bad mood, because then they get what they want, because I'll constrict further. So now instead of them, you're doing all these things, so now I love you, they're just learning to just be in a bad mood. They're learning to not see, they don't see the good, right? We're like, oh, I'll do everything perfect and then you'll love me. But if I don't love me and if I'm not being me, then there's no one for him to love,
I
right?
keep
So
picturing, like, as you're speaking, the image that's
yeah.
coming to my mind is of like that, perfectly clad woman in makeup with the like perfect hair standing like this in front of her refrigerator in the
Mm-hmm.
1950s like commercials. And
Mm-hmm.
she looks like a Barbie. Like she looks plastic. She doesn't look
Yeah.
human. And
Yeah.
it's so difficult to connect to somebody that plastic. Meanwhile, she's trying so hard to be lovable. But
Yes.
like, you kind of want her hair to be messy. Like you kind
Yeah.
of want her there to be something vulnerable there because you can't fall in love with plastic.
Exactly. Exactly. So that's the irony. We spend so much time being and doing what we think he'll love, right? That will accept, will be worthy of his love. What we actually are doing is creating more disconnection, right? He gets more and more unhappy, and we get more and more unhappy, and everyone's unhappy and resentful. And, why can't you be more like this? And why can't you appreciate me, right? There's also that resentment of like, I'm doing so much for you and you're still not happy with me. There's just so much resentment. And when women learn to be themselves and be authentic and let go of that fear of everything not being perfect, that's when connection can happen.
There's
Does that resonate with you?
yeah, there's this thing that happens sometimes. Well, I'll be in the kitchen cooking, trying to make this like really awesome meal. Food is a big thing for me. It's also a big way that I give love. So I'm like
Mm-hmm.
trying to make this perfect meal. I can't believe
Mm-hmm.
I'm sharing this. Is really vulnerable. I'm gonna share it anyway. And my husband will like come up from behind and try to just like
Mm-hmm.
have this sweet, intimate moment.
Yeah.
And what's going through my mind is like, stop interrupting me. I'm trying to make the perfect meal.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, I'm not like,
100%.
I'm trying to do this thing so that he'll do the thing, you know, and he's already
Yeah.
doing it. He's right there, and I'm
Yeah.
totally missing it.
Yeah. Exactly. That's such a perfect example of it, right? And we're so focused on like, I'm going to make you love me that we can't even receive the love that's being given,
Because I'm
right? We
not
can't.
perfect enough yet. I don't really deserve it.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's why the key to all of this, before we can even talk about how we relate to other people, it always starts with how do I relate to myself, right? Do I love myself? Right? Do I feel deserving of love? Am I able to receive your love? Am I enough? Can I be me even if you're not going to like all those aspects of me? Can I still be me, trusting that I'm awesome? Even if you don't like every part of me, I'm still worthy of love. I'm still a worthy woman. I'm still, you know, the woman that I'm going to be and the woman that you fell in love with, right? Even if you're not going to like everything that I'm going to say. And when we can let go of that fear of, am I going to be perfect enough? Are you going to like this? Then we're authentic, then we're vulnerable. That's where connection happens.
It feels like I'm trying to put words to it, but the challenge that I have is that if for me the idea of being vulnerable and open is scary,
Yeah.
which I see for a lot of people is true. So how do
Hmm.
I get past that? How do I get past that fear of like, oh, what if he really sees me?
Yeah. Yeah. It's such a good question. And you're right. This is our fear. So, it's almost, being vulnerable is vulnerable, right? Being vulnerable is so freaking vulnerable. Like it's so hard. And some of it is that acceptance of like the reason this is so vulnerable, the reason it's so hard to be vulnerable is because it holds so much power. Because it holds so much power to connect. That's why it's so vulnerable. So it's the reason it's scary is the reason why it's so important, right?
And so like you feel like just understanding the significance and the benefit of it can help me overcome the fear.
Yeah, because when you see the fear, you feel the fear. It's not like we often think, remember that our bodies are like, fear is supposed to stop us from doing dangerous things, right? If I am standing at the edge of a building and I look down and I'm afraid, I'm going to jump back, right? So fear stops us from doing things that are even good for us to do, especially if we misinterpret other feelings as fear. And I think vulnerability is one of those, right? When we feel vulnerable, there's a part of us that feels fear. Like we feel vulnerable and we interpret it as, oh, that's fear, because it feels very similar to fear, right? Other things that feel similar to fear are actually excitement. Do you know that on a fMRI machine, when your brain experiences fear and when your brain experiences excitement, it's the same thing.
Like the same
The
stuff
only
lights up.
The same stuff's happening. The only difference is, are you smiling or not? Right? So, like when you're really excited about something and like you feel it in the pit of your stomach,
A
it
heart
feels like fear.
races.
Yeah, it's like fear, but it's not fear. So, when we can recognize, I can think of so many of the biggest life changing moments that I had in my life, right? Think of the biggest life changing moments you had, right? The day you got married, when you're expecting your children, when you're doing something like you're starting a business, you're standing at a simcha, at a gather, like something happy is happening to you, right? You're about to marry off a child. You're about to meet, go on a date with somebody who like you really like, right? Or you're about to go on some life changing, for me, the time that I really experienced this, when I was about to go on a life changing experience. I was going to go for 3 days by myself overseas to meet my coach and spend time just working on myself, and I felt terrified. And I just had to keep reminding myself, this isn't like, yes, there's fear, but it's also excitement. And because I gave myself permission to feel the fear and do it anyway, because I gave myself permission to be excited about it and jump in, right? And that's the same thing when we're vulnerable. We get to experience these life-changing moments, right? If every time I'm about to be vulnerable, I say, scary, scary, and I jump away, then there's no opportunity for connection.
And I'm
We,
also telling myself this is something I can't handle, as opposed to
yeah,
saying, okay, you can do this. Like, you kind of coach yourself through it a little bit.
exactly. What am I feeling right now? And yes, it's scary, but when you feel a fear, what is it that I want? Because if we stay focused on the fear, that's the crazy thing. If you focus on the fear, it's too scary to tell him because what? What are we afraid is going to happen? Right? He won't like it. What would you say?
Yeah, it's like he'll see me and I'm not worthy. That's something I hear clients saying a lot. Like,
Yeah.
I'll be
Yeah.
seen, and that's like the worst thing ever is to be seen, which of course is ironic because that's what we want
Right.
more than anything else in the world, is to be seen.
Yeah. And if when you're afraid to be seen, what's the fear? What's the fear under that they're telling you? Why are they so afraid to be seen?
That they'll see what I already believe about myself.
Which is,
I'm not worthy, I'm not lovable, I'm disgusting, something like that.
yeah,
Those come up a lot.
yeah. And so when they see that, then what's going to happen? What's the fear under that?
I'll be alone.
I'll be alone. So instead, I'll go into this date or I'll go into this experience. I won't share. I won't be real. I won't be authentic. I won't be someone he can fall in love with or someone that he's going to continue to be in love with. And then what will happen?
Guaranteed to be alone.
The fear creates the fear. It's this crazy thing. So we never want to live into the fear. Whenever we're living into the fear, we got to catch it and say, wait a second, right? And I'm also a very visual person. So I love how everything now is on Zoom because people can actually see me doing these crazy things with my hands. So instead of when we're in fear, we're like over here and we're like, oh my gosh. And then we're acting into the fear, which creates the fear. And what we want to do is recognize that, say, hold on. How am I creating my fear? This is not serving me. And instead, we can make a shift into what do I want? What do I want in this moment? Right? And if what I want is to connect, right? If what I want is to see, can this person hold my vulnerability? Do I want to keep dating them? Or, if what I want is to connect with my husband at the end of the day, or if what I want is to share an intimate moment with someone, then I got to jump in. I want to jump in.
So how does empathy fit into that? So that feels like, okay, so I'm empathizing with myself, and I'm also seeing myself and seeing my fear and kind of coaching myself through, being willing to like jump into that fear. But
Yeah.
how does it work with empathy as far as my relationship with the other?
That's a good question. So, yes, first of all, empathy always starts with me. I have to empathize with myself. I have to know what's going on for me. If I don't know what's going on for me, I can't do anything about it. Right. And everything we do and everything we think and everything we see in our lives is a result of what's going on inside of us. And if we're not empathizing with that, if we're not being real with it, then we can't shift that. And the same thing goes for our relationships with other people. So, one of the things that I hear so much is like this, in one way or another, someone saying like, what the heck was he thinking? Right? Like, why would he do that? What's wrong with him? How could he think that that is the normal way to X, Y, and Z? Spend money, put a kid to bed, wash the dishes, do that with his job, take me on that date, propose to me in that way, fill in the blanks, right? What are I'm sure you've heard a million of these also, right?
And thought a bunch as well.
Right, for sure, all the time, right? Like, what were you thinking doing that? Like, how could you have said that? How could you have made that decision, right? And basically the reason we're doing that is because we are seeing other people through our own eyes, right? I'm judging you and your actions based on how I see the world, right? How I think things should be done, how I think that dishes should be washed and kids should be put to bed and business decisions should be made. And this is how you should talk to your mother and your kid and your boss. And this is how you should have taken me out. And this is how you should sleep and eat and exercise and should, right? We're, just that's what it's all about. And what's important to remember is that nobody in the world sees the world and experiences the world the way you do. No one. I have a twin sister. We don't experience the world the same way, even though we were born to the same family at the same time and we grew up with all the same friends. And still, do we experience the world in the same way? Absolutely not. So no one experiences the world the same way you did. So nobody's thinking the way you do, and nobody is going to make decisions the way you do. And this is where it's very important for us to remember, and this is something I say all the time, different doesn't make it wrong. Right? Someone doing something differently than you do doesn't mean that they did it wrong. It's just different than you. And so empathy is about being able to say, not why would you do that, but why would you do that? Right? It's that little, this is my favorite emoji. Right? That's what I send all the time to my clients. Why would you do that? Why would he do that? Right? That's where empathy plays in. Let me try to understand it from your perspective instead of me projecting onto you what I would have done. Let me understand from you and your perspective why you did that.
It feels like the first one is saying, why are you such an idiot? And the other is, what inspired you to make that choice?
Exactly.
It's like such a different, it's me really trying to seek understanding. The other one is using a question to really not ask a question. I'm like not interested in the answer. I'm just using a questioning tone to be like, you idiot.
Right. And sometimes we get stuck and like the person answers us and we're like, oh yeah, I was just asking. And they're like, no, you weren't. So just imagine, it's like, it's life changing, it's relationship changing when we can use empathy with other people. We're not just looking at the world based on what do I see, but we're looking at it based on, let me understand it from your perspective. Let me take a step back and try to understand what you did through who you are, through your experiences. Right? And it means that like, I don't necessarily get a say in your choices because you're not me. Right? You're not going to think of it the same way. You're not going to make the same choices, and being okay with that.
And just being able to say, like, I can hold space for you as a human being independent of me as a human being.
Exactly. Empathy is, when I have empathy for myself, I'm saying I matter. Right? My feelings, my thoughts, my issues, they matter. And when I have empathy for you, I'm saying you matter, right? And you don't have to fit into me. We can have two different, doesn't make it wrong. So I see the world this way, you see the world that way. And that's the core of everything. That's the core of being able to have healthy communication. It's the way to resolve differences. It's the way to deal with challenges. We have to be able to, if you look at any communication skills, anything, they all have this underlying assumption that you are making space for each other, giving empathy to yourself and to him.
It seems to me that that if I'm not okay with myself and someone has a perspective that's different from mine, that I can experience that as threatening. Right? So that either they're wrong or I'm wrong.
Yes.
But if I'm fully full with myself and I'm okay with myself, then someone can have a different perspective and it's just interesting. I can be curious about it, and I can be curious about myself, and I can hold both. But if I feel like I'm teetering, then somebody offering a different perspective, it's like, it's so dangerous. I think that's why people are so willing, like with the politics, like to kill each other over, perspectives, without recognizing that it's like, okay, there could be two different perspectives and they both have wisdom, and then can I hold both?
100%. 100%. That's I think that's exactly it. When we are not confident in ourselves. That's why I have to matter. If I don't matter, see, when I matter, you can say something totally contradictory to me. You can even say, Chana, that's the stupidest thing I ever heard. Me, Chana, not you, Chana. The Chana, that's the stupidest thing I ever heard. And if I'm not confident about myself, I'm going to be insulted. I'm going to get defensive. I'm going to retaliate. I'm going to say, well, what you said is stupid too, right? Like there's no communication. There's nothing. And if you even just say something different, like, well, I think about it this way, I'm not going to be able to hear you because I'm going to need to keep jumping in and telling you, like arguing with you and showing you how you're wrong. And here's my perspective. And, and then you're not communicating. You're each trying to convince. You ever have a conversation with someone and you're like, you thought you were having a conversation, but you're really each trying to convince the other of your perspective, which is most
It's like
political
two-year-olds
discussions.
having a parallel play.
Exactly. And when I feel confident in who I am and I feel confident in what I want and I feel confident in my beliefs, then if you don't say I'm stupid, it's like, okay, you don't have to like what I have to say, right? And if you disagree with me, I'm going to want to I want to understand your perspective because it's not threatening me, right?
And if anything, it can inform you.
Yeah, it informs. Even if I'm not looking to change my opinion, I get to be informed about you and who you are, right? That's connection. Connection is I want to get to know you, right? That's love. Love is all about getting to know you and valuing you and wanting to know who you are. If I'm so busy cutting you off and telling you what I think, well then I don't get to know you. I already know what I think, right? It's that I want to know what you think. So it allows for a whole different level of connection, both because you're having open communication and because you actually get to know the person, which is the basis of love.
So thank you so much for that. So
You're welcome.
come out of this thinking about whenever I feel threatened or defensive to automatically say, okay, how can I make myself feel more in love with myself and more secure with myself so I can actually meet another person with presence and with empathy. And if the question is coming in my mind, like, why did you do that? I can sort of change it to a stance of curiosity and be like, oh, I wonder what inspired you to make that choice, right? Like that's like what's coming up in my mind. So thank you for those tips. It's like,
you're welcome.
Really great because I'm always looking for little distinctions that can inform my marriage and our relationship. And I see that you have a program, so I'm going to post that. Can you tell us about it?
Yeah, so this is basically a free gift. It's an ebook that I wrote about how it's called Connecting Through Femininity, and it talks about 3 different feminine traits, feminine aspects of ourselves that we can use to build connection. One of them is empathy. So you'll just see a little bit of a summary of what we talked about, and then so that'll give you like a good summary of everything we did. But then there's also 2 other traits, feminine traits that you can use to create more connection in your life. And you also have the ability to have time to talk. So if you have any questions or you want to know how to apply this better to your relationship, you have the ability to also schedule a time to speak with me. And I'd love to get to know you. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you for joining us here on the Vitality Show. And we're getting close to that point where we're, deciding as a program how much we want to continue with the show. So I'm looking forward to feedback. Like, is this something, are these interviews really meaningful for you guys as an audience? And if so, are there people you'd really love to see on the show? Please let me know. You can put it in the comments or you can send me a personal message. And in the meantime, everyone, have a wonderful week. Thanks, Chana.
Thank you.